This is the Course of Action podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Clark. My debut book, Hear These Truths, the ultimate guide to building your leadership algorithm, is available now wherever books are sold. Check it out on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and for signed copies, go to jeffclarkofficial.com and get in touch. Don't forget to follow on social media, leave a 5-star review for the book, and hit that subscribe button for the latest episode notifications. And as always, enjoy the episode. All right, guys, welcome back to the Course of Action podcast. I have Dr. Jennifer Byrne here with me. Again, this is not the first time she's been on. This is kind of round 2. And we're going to talk about a lot of stuff today that maybe some of you have already heard. But the reason why I asked her to come back on is to talk, one, again, about performance therapy. It's such an important topic. And to kind of follow up on Shields and Stripes and where it's at and where performance therapy is kind of growing into, because it's a very important topic. So Jennifer, or Dr. Byrne, welcome.
Thank you. You can call me Jen. I just put that there because it looks super cool and super official. But
I love it. That's why I'm going to school right now to get my doctorate. And I'm not going to lie. I'm going to probably throw it around there a little bit.
Right. I submitted, I think my eventual project was like 120 pages. And as soon as I submitted that, I was like, dang, I'm just gonna sign my name, Dr. Byrne. I'll write it there every now and then, but please, Jen is fine.
Oh, throw it around a little bit. Why not? I mean, you earned it.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me on again. It's always so nice to catch up with an old friend. You were there for me the very beginning of my transition. So it's good to be back on.
I remember that when you put that first post out, I can't remember how I saw it, but I remember I saw something and I was like, oh man, I was just at that time in my LinkedIn journey, I was just finding veterans and I was like, oh, hey, go look at this, go look at that. And I was just trying to be a kind of a facilitator, and it's cool to see what all you've done. And I'm glad you came back on so we could talk about it some more. So first of all, let's talk about, let's introduce yourself again for those who are maybe new listeners.
Awesome. Yeah. My name is Jenn Byrne. I am currently living in Alaska, which is a change from the last time. I moved from Florida. My husband is a combat rescue officer, so he went from active duty in the Air Force down in Florida, solidified an AGR gig up here in Alaska, which means we do not have to move anymore. He is happy at a rescue unit for the rest of his 12 years or so. So we are happy as well. Plus, Alaska is beautiful. As Jeff said, I am a veteran myself. I spent just about 7 years in the Air Force as an occupational therapist, treating everything from musculoskeletal upper extremity injuries, shoulder, wrist, finger amputations, to post-traumatic stress disorder, depression, and then transitioning over to some brain injuries. Spent some time with the Army learning about burns. So lots of different disabilities in those 7 years. Gained some really, really excellent experience, really excellent network of clinicians, and made the transition in 2020. I had my daughter in February, transitioned out of the military in November. And that was for a lot of different reasons, but really primarily had this pull that I could do more as a civilian, and that I would be granted the flexibility and the opportunity and the autonomy to do more and help more people in the military, no matter what. As we all know, there's so much that you can do, but you're always on a leash, right? And that length of the leash really depends on your supervisor, your command. So yeah, I made the jump, started my own business, and then very quickly found myself having a conversation with my now co-founder. So I'm also the co-founder of a nonprofit named Shields and Stripes.
Yeah, shout out to Steve. setting this up and doing Shields and Stripes. It's so cool. And it seems like, we talk about it like, oh yeah, 2020. But like when I first met you, it was like, okay, I'm starting 5x5 performance therapy. And I was like, what the heck is performance therapy? And then all of a sudden you're like, okay, now I'm doing Shields and Stripes. And I was like, oh, hey, hold on. I can't keep up yet. But doing awesome stuff. So first of all, let's define before we get deep into the discussion, let's define real quick what is performance therapy.
Yeah, that's and we've had this discussion before. It's really funny. When I was trying to figure out a name for 5x5, I was like, all right, well, I know that it's not just going to be occupational therapists. I know that it's not just going to be physical therapists. I want nutritionists. I want mental health practitioners. So, I mean, Jeff, to be totally honest with you, performance therapy is kind of something at the time. I won't claim that I made it up, but performance therapy is coming quickly to fruition, and it's getting a little bit of traction in the sense that it really is a multidisciplinary team. And I guess this is my own definition. So when I'm thinking about performance therapy, I'm thinking, okay, a psychologist has their very specific way of approaching the human. A nutritionist has their very specific way of approaching a human, as does a physical therapist, as does an occupational therapist. And, alone, there's only so much that we can do with our education and our scope. But together is really where wonderful, magical things happen. Um, so I guess, and this is again just personal, but performance therapy to me, the key to that is that there's a multidisciplinary team of professionals working together on a person's treatment to bring in multiple different backgrounds and theories and ways to treat the human more holistically.
And I remember, and I bring it up and I ask you kind of to define it. There's no right answer or wrong answer. But because I remember when you first told me about it, and I was like, I don't know what is performance therapy. Like, I'm not an athlete. What is performance therapy? And you kind of went through it like that, and we talked about it. A surgeon fixes this. A doctor looks at this. A psychologist looks at this. Why? Is there 15 different places to treat one individual, and veterans are maybe the best example of that. Is why, as a veteran, when you have all these issues, do you have to go to 50 different people?
Who don't talk to each other.
You don't talk to each other, and maybe get don't get answers, or you duplicate things. And I never really thought of it until I started really going to the VA for everything that I had broken and wrong, and I needed to talk to people, and I sought help from my mental health and all that, and I realized I'm working on one thing and they're helping me work on one thing, but I'm not working on all these other things which are actually bringing me down in other areas. It's just a constant. It looked like a soundboard.
Yeah.
All the levels are always bouncing up and down. So when you said performance therapy to me, I was like, that's really, really smart. That's focusing on a little bit of everything with the goal to just and focus on what needs the most, and just kind of riding the wave as opposed to just watching the wave go. And I
Mhm.
thought, man, that's so smart. And I asked you to define it because your performance therapy concept has turned into not just a business, but the main thing I want to talk about is Shields and Stripes that you founded with Steve Nesbitt, who's also a veteran. And Shields and Stripes has been, this is kind of like year two ish, right?
Sure. Yes. So we technically got our 501 status in September of just 2021. And Steve and I had our very first conversation in February and applied for our 501 in April. So yes, we are in the very beginning of year two.
Okay, so year two ish, you've had a couple of cohorts now, right?
We've had two cohorts and we're ramping up for our third in August.
Awesome. So let's talk about Shields and Stripes and what the purpose of that is and why performance therapy is kind of the topic.
Yeah, sure. Um, So, Shields and Stripes is a combination of ideas. Steve is my co founder. He is a prior 2-4 pararescueman. And he has a really compelling story about his own difficulties. Um, and a little bit of background as well. When I was in the Air Force, I had the very unique opportunity to create the Special Warfare trainees' very first POTIF team, which is essentially performance therapy. So I brought in occupational therapists, physical therapists. We had a nutritionist, strength and conditioning coach, and a couple of other people. Going back to Steve, though, what he realized is when he went through his traumas and his depressions and his post-traumatic stress, what happened was he was able to access his performance therapy team quickly, very quickly, immediately. So there was no wait. He didn't have to go into a hospital with really sterile white walls and fear that someone in his unit would see him and wonder what the heck he's doing in a mental health clinic. He was able to walk right next door into his performance therapy space and say, hey, I need some help. And that team he says is responsible for saving his life. So Steve was on the side of receiving this performance therapy model that saved his life. And then my background is coming from being with the clinicians that developed the team to hopefully, to save and change people's lives. So what Shields and Stripes is a kind of a little bit taking the preservation of the force and family, so the POTIF teams with the Air Force, but then sprinkling in 5x5 with the virtual therapy. So we provide, the goal is to provide 4 weeks of intense outpatient therapies. So that's intensive outpatient means that you are with us for about 8 hours per day, and then your nights and your weekends are your own. So we provide strength and conditioning, nutrition, physical therapy, occupational therapy, and psych services. So that's 4 weeks every day. And then on top of that, and what really differentiates us from other people is that we take it a step further. And after they're done with us for the 4 weeks, we provide them with 12 weeks of telehealth. So we take that performance team that I just mentioned of in-person, pick it up, put it in the virtual world, and then we say, hey, we need your family to be a part of this.
Mm-hmm.
The 4 weeks was for you to concentrate on yourself. Now it's time to take it a step further and concentrate on figuring how to take what you learned in 4 weeks, transition it to your home and your work environments, and integrate your family into this healing process.
Yeah, because the family is such a big part of it all. And we talk about, what happens when you come home, deploy and you come home, you go through these traumas and you come home, what do you do? And we forget that home is a place, is a very intimate place and kind of going into that. And, what do? You can learn everything you need to learn in 4 weeks, but if nobody knows when you walk through the front door what you're dealing with, what you've learned, it's so much harder to apply it.
Right. And how can let's take the really, really basic example of nutrition. So, let's say we take you, Jeff, and we're with you for 4 weeks and we just flipped your nutrition plan all the way around and you're feeling great. And you're feeling really confident in this nutrition plan. You go home, your family has no idea what this nutrition plan is. And your wife happens to be the one that does the grocery shopping. Well, what's going to happen if she's not involved in that process, if she doesn't support you, if she doesn't know what your goals are, if she doesn't know what your nutrition needs are? So we have to be really realistic in our approach and every other major decision in life is a family decision, right? You would never pick up and move without your family's decision or your family's decision-making process or make a huge financial purchase. So it's like, why are we not approaching healthcare as a family unit, especially in the veteran and first responder community?
Oh yeah. Makes too much sense.
We have to. It's silly not to.
Yeah. And it sounds like something like, why haven't we been doing this? Why? It sounds like such a good idea, and it makes so much sense that you would think, well, this has surely been done before, but no. I mean, the idea of like a medical team I've heard of it before, but it didn't seem to be like, didn't seem to really work out that well. This is like a no joke, forcing the square peg into the round hole and molding it until it fits and saying, this is going to work. This has to work because look at the benefits, look at the results that are poised to happen. And we would be foolish to not try, knowing there's a potential fantastic result. And I think it's awesome because you guys have done 2 cohorts now. Let's talk about the cohorts specifically. You've done 2 of them now. Where are you doing them at, and how have those gone?
Yeah, so the cohorts, we have a really great relationship with Exos.
I
So
saw that.
Exos is a premier rehabilitation and performance company, and they are just, I mean, they're top notch. So we're really, really lucky to have a great relationship with them. So we utilize their facilities, and they lend us some of their clinicians as well. And then we supplement with the mental health piece. So we also bring in our own therapists, and then of course the virtual piece. But the cohorts, geographically, we've hosted in two locations. That would be Exos in Gulf Breeze, Florida. And that was in September, where we hosted 4 participants. And then we went ahead and trialed the headquarters of Exos in Phoenix, Arizona, where we hosted 6 athletes. And then in August, we are also going to host at Exos Arizona, and we're hosting 8 athletes. And then hopefully in October, we will be going back to Florida, refining our program, hosting 10 athletes for the full 4 weeks of in-person and 12 weeks of telehealth.
So what if somebody is listening and they're like, hey, this performance therapy, this stuff sounds pretty awesome. What can they expect out of the cohort?
Yeah. Well, if someone's listening and they're interested, first what they would need to do is take a look at our website, which is shieldsandstripes.org, and there's an application that they would fill out first on the website. And the application's pretty much written. It just asks some basic questions, and we really leave it rather open-ended. What's your story? So Shields and Stripes, we do have a focus on mental health and trauma. So we tell people, hey, you are qualified to come to us if you are struggling, if you don't feel like yourself, if you want to get better, if you're motivated to get better. Have you experienced something that's really negatively impacting your life? And if the answer to that is yes, and you're motivated to get better, then you're qualified to come see us. So you'd fill out the application. My mental health team would schedule a quick Zoom interview with you, just to make sure that Shields and Stripes is the right fit for you and you're the right fit for Shields and Stripes. We can't take anyone, for example, with any active substance abuse issues. We would help them find that care first with our partner organizations, and then encourage them to reapply. And then we also want to make sure that they understand that we are intensive outpatient. We're not inpatient. We don't lock doors. We don't make you do anything. This is all your own motivation.
Right.
So if someone is, actively suicidal, for example, we have partner organizations that we'd like them to see first. But if they're kind of like right in that middle where they're not happy with themselves, they're having sleep disturbances, or they're depressed, or they just don't feel like the best version of themselves, then they're perfect for us. So that application process is pretty easy. We give you the thumbs up. We pay for lodging, meals, flights. We pay for everything. And then you come to us and we give you a schedule and say, hey, this is where you're going to show up every day. And for 6 to 7 hours every day, they work out on the floor next to professional athletes. They shower, and they may go to their PT appointment, or they may round the corner and go to their psych appointment. They have group therapy with our occupational therapists, where they'll learn about sleep performance, healthy habits, defining and writing their own personal goals, communication skills, emotion management. They'll trial things like journaling, meditation, a lot of different things, because what we understand is that there's not one recipe that fits everyone.
Mhm.
But if we can at least convince you if we introduce 10 concepts to you and you can grab a hold of 3, well, your life is going to be better.
Right.
And then the other beautiful part about these cohorts is that the really unforeseen and unplanned benefit is the family that develops between the athletes. They a lot of them come to us during the worst parts of their lives, the scariest parts of their lives, and they look around and they realize that they're not alone. And it is really quite beautiful to see.
So let's talk. Those are kind of expectations, kind of how it goes. The 4 weeks, what you get. If you're listening and you're wondering, like, oh, 4 weeks, I don't know. Well, listen, she just told you straight up, like, they're going to almost hold your hand and say, hey, you're going here, you're going there. We're going to monitor, make adjustments. It's going to be constant. It's not going to camp where it's a predetermined schedule and they just throw it to you. And today we're making stick figures out of popsicle sticks. You're doing all kinds of different things and they're adjusting it. Now, let's talk about this though, because I think this word is really, really important. And and I think you're going to have something to say about it, but it's commitment. What should people expect commitment wise? Not from you guys, but from themselves. Because I find that I talk to a lot of veterans and they say, yeah, I went and did this. I was committed to it. And after like 2 days, I quit. Or after like a couple of months, I quit. It's like, okay, well, what did you get? And they never talk about what they got out of it. They just talk about the fact that they quit. And it's a commitment to long term. 4 weeks isn't going to solve all the problems. The additional 12 isn't going to solve all the problems. Let's talk about the commitment that you have to kind of really dedicate to really see through the 4 weeks, see through the 12 weeks, and then come out on the other side as with permanent changes.
Yeah, I love that. So first of all, kind of going back to expectations, it is overwhelming. And I think we really try to prepare our athletes to understand that you're going to be meeting all new faces, all new therapists, walking around with these professional athletes. So understanding and having realistic expectations about being scared, being fearful, and that being okay, it is really important. But I think with commitment goes trust. So we ask our athletes when we're scheduling that first Zoom, our therapists are very quite good at gauging motivation. And if we determine that you're motivated and you want to change, because we can't force people to come to us, and we don't want to, because they need to be at the point of their lives where they are motivated to change. They are motivated to feel and get better. So with commitment comes trust. And so what we ask of our athletes is, you are going to be scared. You are going to be overwhelmed. You are going to be uncomfortable. Trust me, especially in that first week. But that's the thing. Trust us. Trust me. And they have to come with motivation and trust, which turns into commitment. So if you are motivated, if you're self-motivated to get better, and most people, like I said, Jeff, they're at their rock bottom. So a lot of people approach us and they say, hey, I don't have anything to lose here. I only have things to gain. And you trust us. Then that commitment should be very natural. And I'll tell you, we've only had 10 athletes. We've had really good results with all of our 10 athletes, specifically in the commitment. We haven't had anyone come to us and say, hey, this isn't for us. We haven't had anyone that hasn't seen through their telehealth. And I mean, every single telehealth session. So I think it's a recipe of you being motivated, but you also being vulnerable enough to trust us in the process.
And I think that's a testament to the process and to the system that you guys have built, is that you're asking people to take 16 weeks out of their life. And I know the telehealth is probably it's not a full day. I know it's shorter than that, but you're still taking up kind of a day, because there's a lot goes into just one of those appointments. I mean, they're thinking about it. They move their world around that appointment because they're trying to dedicate themselves to being on time and attending that. And then they got to get the whole family to go to those, because that's just not individualized one that's for the whole family. But I like that you have had that success, but I also like that you call them athletes. Um, Patience, I think we all understand the word patient, and I don't think many people probably don't take it as a derogatory thing. However, when you go to talk about things like vulnerability, and we talked about vulnerability off the air, but when you put yourself in a vulnerable position and then you get called a patient, yeah, you get you into feelings a little bit, especially when we're talking about mental health or maybe other kinds of performance issues, whether it be sexual, mental, physical, and then you get called a patient. Then you kind of start to feel like, okay, I didn't come in here for a cold. I came in here for this, and now I kind of feel like I'm in the wrong.
Right.
I like that they're called athletes. And going back to the whole performance thing, I think we talked about this the first time me and you chatted, was that performance, we demand athletic like performance out of our military members, out of our cops, out of our firemen, out of our emergency responders. They got to be able to run, lift, they got to be able to do all this stuff, but we don't put the training and the rehabilitation like athletes. There's
Mhm.
no training room that these guys walk back to with trainers sitting there and ice tubs and all this stuff. They go back to maybe a locker
Mhm.
and their squad car,
Mhm.
or they go get in their truck and drive home. So I like the performance aspect of it. Is, hey, you're an athlete. We got to work on all of you because
Yeah,
it's about performance.
absolutely. And it's worth saying too, the Shields and Stripes team is incredible. I don't know how we landed on the caliber of humans that we now have behind the scenes.
Meant to be. Meant to be.
I just, I mean, we've got we've got prior commanders, we've got an astrophysicist. Like it's crazy, but it's worth saying that with us, of course, there's professional relationships with therapists. There's a therapist-client rapport, and so on and so forth. But when you see us walking around with this polo, we don't want it to be sir or ma'am, and we don't want it to be I'm higher than you because I'm your doctor and you're the athlete. That's not the persona, and that's not the kind of team that we have.
Hmm.
What we do is another part of our program is we have athlete mentors, and we have a spouse engagement program. Like we can't ask these people to trust us and then say, well, you're my patient. It's not going to garner trust. So we like the term athletes because exactly what you say, physically it's required of them, but also mentally they have to be athletic, and that's why we have the mental health piece very specifically ingrained in their program. And then at the same time, they have to take on that persona of athlete. We like to identify a little bit more as mentors and coaches. And even though we have doctors of OT and doctors of psych, and we're doing all of that doctor stuff with them, it's just a little bit different than a sterile hospital environment. And we aim to really get away from that, because that is going to be what makes someone trust us, lets them be vulnerable with us, and ultimately breaks down the stigma of mental health and seeking help in the first place.
So let's switch it up a bit and let's talk about some of the victories. We know the cohorts have gone well. You're gearing up for the third one. The partnerships have gone well, but you've done more than just that. You had like a gala, like a ball, and you guys have done some fundraising. And let's talk about that and what we could see more of in the future outside of the meat and potatoes. What else is Shields and Stripe getting into?
Oh, geez. There's so many things, right? Um,
Let's talk about the ball first. The
okay,
gala.
the gala was, it was a lot of work, a lot of planning, and anybody out there who's ever thrown a gala is probably smiling because, man, after that gala, I was like, I don't want to hear the word gala ever again. But it was it was it was wonderful and amazing. And yes, we raised quite a bit of money, which is wonderful. That's great. But here's what differentiates Shields and Stripes again with other nonprofits. Steve and I had a chance to go to a gala, and we left feeling like the nonprofit that hosted it did a very good job of providing awards to the richest people in the audience, the biggest donors.
Yeah.
And we were like, that doesn't feel like us. That doesn't feel right. So what we did instead is we provided awards to our therapists, to the ones who were making the real change.
Mm-hmm.
The therapists are contracted, so we do pay them, but they do so much volunteer work. They do so much that's not paid and that they'll never get paid for because they believe in Shields and Stripes. So at the gala, we provided them with the recognition and the awards that they deserved, but also it was a chance for both cohorts of athletes to meet each other.
Oh, cool.
To sit at the same table. It was a chance for the athletes to bring their families so that their families could meet and spend a couple of days together, if not just the evening together. So while the intention was to raise money, we are going to do galas again because it was just so it was like another level of therapeutic to see these athletes and their families engaging with one another.
That's awesome. Yeah, and you got to have money to do great things. Unfortunately, you do. You can have a lot of volunteer work and a lot of volunteer effort, but where it really kind of counts is having the money to do things. And yeah, it feels selfish when you go to raise money, but I know how important it is. I volunteer with a couple veterans organizations, and I'm telling you, money is a game changer. It just absolutely is when you're wanting to do something and you know that money's limiting you, but you get funding and then you go, okay, this opens up a new door.
Oh, yeah.
And for a nonprofit, I mean, opening up doors is the whole purpose, and doing awesome things and exposing people to more awesome things is the whole point. And I think it's awesome that you did a gala so soon. I mean, a lot of nonprofits would not be bold enough to do that in maybe even the first 5 years because it's an undertaking. And if anybody listening has been to a military ball, an Air Force ball, Army ball, any of those, it's kind of what a gala is. It's a party on steroids where everybody dresses up to the nines. It's very, it can be very, very fancy, but it's a big, big deal. There's auctions, there's, networking, there's tons of stuff, but you don't just rent a room and throw some tablecloths down and go forth. It's a huge undertaking. So I think it's awesome that you guys did it. Plus you did the auction and did like the online auction. Like you guys went all in. Like anybody just looking at it for the first time would have been, man, these guys know what they're doing. It was the first one.
Yeah, no, we had some really great people helping us as far as like the auction and the virtual side of the house and the interviews and the stuff. But you just mentioned a word and it made me laugh. Bold. Man, I will tell you, my co-founder is bold, and he is relentless. He is the visionary. I'm always he hates it because I'm like, hey man, we need to reel it in a little bit. But you're right. I mean, we are bold, and we're going to get louder, and we're going to be more effective because we are going to gain funding and big funding very soon. And we do it for a lot of different reasons. There are personal reasons, there are personal stories. A big person who has influenced us in this entire story is Peter Cranes, who lost his life. So we honor him. But we're going to get loud, and we're going to get louder, and we're going to be bolder because what we're doing works. And what we're doing should be the standard of care. And what we're doing shouldn't just be the standard of care, honestly, for veterans and first responders. It should be the standard of care for everyone.
Yeah, and it really shouldn't sound this impressive.
Right?
It should sound like the expectation. That's where the bar is set.
I know. And I wish, sometimes I wish I could record some of like the meetings that I have with my therapists. So we do rounds, right? So when if Jeff, you come to our, you come to our clinic and we're in the middle of a telehealth and I meet with all of my therapists and I say, okay, let's talk about Jeff. Talk about Jeff's goals. Let's talk about the approaches. I'm telling you, if it were just me treating Jeff as an occupational therapist, I would miss so much. If I wasn't able to talk to Jeff's psych, if I wasn't able to talk to Jeff's strength and conditioning coach or his nutritionist, I would have no idea about the holistic nature of Jeff, and it would change. I would miss out on so many things that I could do in my plan. There is like beauty and magic that happens when a team of different professionals comes in. So it shouldn't be impressive. It sounds like common sense, and it should be common sense, and it is.
Yeah, should be standard practice.
Right. And that's why, we are not scared to say that the American healthcare system isn't working. It's not working. So someone has to be bold and someone has to be loud, because if we actually expect to improve people's lives and to make a difference in these suicide statistics that we're seeing, then you have to be bold and loud.
So, speaking of bold and loud, how are we getting bolder and louder with Shields and Stripes? I know third cohort's coming up, but on top of that, what else is coming in like the next year or so?
Yeah. The biggest things that I think are happening with Shields and Stripes is this massive growth of our team. So we have people now who are experts in grant writers, like grant writing. We have people who are experts in customer relations, who are introducing us to Salesforce and how to make sure that we continuously communicate with our donors. And we have people who are logistics experts. We have people who want to write the job descriptions to make sure we're sustainable. So I think the biggest movement isn't necessarily loud. It is bold, and that's the internal growth that's happening within Shields and Stripes. It is going to get louder once we solidify some big things that we have going on as far as funding is concerned, as far as grants and big donors and such. So, with all of that, we have to have the infrastructure to make sure that we can be as effective as we can be when that time comes. So as soon as that money and that sustainable money drops, we can go ahead and execute in the way that we know that we can. So that's happening. We also have, of course, our cohort on August 1st starting up. That's huge. We also have a lot of different fundraisers going on in the community and also internally. And you can find a list of what we're up to on our website always. So we kind of have a tracking record of what's coming next, how you can participate, how you can attend. We're constantly doing Instagram pushes for things like fitness competitions and little raffle prizes here. We have people asking us to host yoga sessions to help us. I just ran 100 miles last month for a friend of ours who wanted to help donate. So lots of different things happening all the time. I think, like I said, the biggest ones are kind of happening internally, which is going to set us up for success to be a little bit louder next year.
I think that's awesome.
Yeah.
I believe so much in what you guys are doing and the whole performance there, but I think about it all the time. And me and my wife just started doing the HelloFresh food delivery.
Yeah.
And oh my God, you would think that we get like 4 meals a week. It's a vegetable with every single meal.
Mhm.
We look more forward to looking at the menu for next week and when our delivery comes on Friday. And in reality, we are having to cook for 30 minutes to an hour every single night to
Uh-huh.
get these meals done. But the commitment, and I've already lost 15 pounds. We're spending more time together. We're saving some money because we're not eating like crap and eating out anymore. But we're actually putting more effort into being happier.
Yeah.
And we've been walking more. I've been trying to get around a little bit more. I feel like I'm falling apart some days, but I don't have the negative outlook on it like I used to.
Mhm.
And I'm just worried about taking care of myself a little more. And it's actually making me happier. I'm not ignoring these things. I'm putting a little bit of attention on them.
Mhm.
I actually feel better about myself. So performance, focusing on performance is such a big deal. And it's silly that we've never thought about it with the human body. We've thought about it with everything else, cars, computers. It's all about performance. How does it work? Performance gets you to the end of the line. Well, you started this performance thing a while back with your business 5x5 and kind of broke into this, and then it led to Shields and Stripes. But let's kind of shift to that and
Mhm.
focus on how performance therapy came to fruition in the first place with 5x5.
Yeah. So 5x5 performance therapy started the day after I got out of active duty. And I mean, it's very simple. When I walked into the PJs and CCT and SAUT at the time into the trainees schoolhouse, I came in as a lieutenant and I was like, "Hey guys, do you need any help?" Um, and they laughed at me, of course, and I was like, "I think I can do something here." But I guess I was young enough um, to know that I couldn't save the world on my own. And at least I could do a lot being an occupational therapist with these guys and these young trainees, but I was in a clinic with physical therapists, and I knew that they had a totally different theory and outlook that I did. And it's not conflicting. We're not in competition. It's rather complementary. And then I had a friend who was a nutritionist, and I started talking to her, and it's like, well, wait a minute. These guys are only going to the DFAC once and they're getting 15 minutes to eat. Are they getting enough calories for their output? And talking to her. And so bringing her in. So it's like, I mean, like I didn't invent performance therapy. I didn't invent the POTIF model or the POTIF team. People understand it. People understood way earlier than I did that they're not the smartest. Um, they're not the most effective being alone. So I think that 5x5 really was me taking the lessons that I learned when I was able to develop that team of professionals very young, and just being really humble and realizing that I don't think any discipline on its own, and PCM, sports medicine doc, physical therapist, occupational therapist, nutritionist, psych doc, I don't think anybody is as effective as treating the person together. Um,
I think that's fair.
yeah, I saw what that did. I saw how what the results looked like. I was convincing 43-year-old combat hardened men to do yoga and to focus on eating some green stuff and really seeing what happened with that, and focusing 18-year-olds to pay attention to the way they pack their rucks to prevent injuries. Um, so yeah, I think that 5x5 was really just me taking a leap of faith, leaving something very, very near and dear to my heart, and just trying to take that and reproduce it in a way to be able to offer up to more than just veterans.
And 5x5, let's talk about how the application is, because you mentioned that you moved all the way up to Alaska, but the business is still churning. How is that even possible?
Yeah, most of our stuff is virtual. So I've got a bunch of clinicians that are part of 5x5. And they, like I said, it's very similar to Shields and Stripes. In fact, the model with Shields and Stripes is contracting the 5x5 clinicians. So 5x5 and Shields and Stripes are really kind of one and the same, except 5x5 primarily, if you're not going through Shields and Stripes, is a virtual performance team. So, for example, we can mobilize as a small team for anyone who needs us short term for 2 to maximum of 3 weeks. We can provide virtual or in-person health and wellness content, from sleep performance to healthy eating habits. I co-lead that with a registered dietitian of mine, communication skills, all the stuff we talked about before. But you can also get a customized performance plan with 5x5 virtually. So what I do is, Jeff, you came to me and you're like, I want performance therapy. I would intake you as the occupational therapist, really learn about your goals and say, okay, Jeff, according to what I've learned about you and you've told me, I think you would benefit from this performance plan. And it includes 4 sessions with a nutritionist, 4 sessions with a physical therapist, 4 sessions with a psych doc, and then 2 sessions to round it out with me to focus on your goals. So it's really, truly customizable. We also have a couple clients right now who really said, hey, I don't want physical therapy. I'm actually not injured. I just want to concentrate on my goals with happiness and nutrition. So it's just OT and nutrition. And some people are just like, hey, I need to get my mind right and my mental health right. I just want to do 6 sessions of psych right now. So it's totally customizable, totally virtual. And you can do it in the comfort of your own house. And what it does is it also gives my clinicians the freedom and the autonomy to be able to have their own lives too, and to be able to treat you from the comfort of their own homes. So it's a win-win situation for everyone.
So if someone was interested in this and maybe were like, I don't know if I could do the whole Shields and Stripes 4 weeks, 12 weeks thing. Um, Not that you need to convince them to do it, but like 5 by 5 is kind of that first step. Like, hey, come test the waters and then let's see what else we can do.
Yes.
How do they get a hold of 5 by 5 and like start that?
Yeah, you can Google 5 by 5 performance therapy. My website will come right up. There's a contact link. I put my email out there to everyone as well. If you're interested in a customized virtual performance program, you can email me directly at jenniferbyrne0512@gmail.com, Byrne. Yeah, there's multiple ways to get into contact with me if they're interested in kind of making their own customized plan. I offer a different packages, or I offer whatever the person really needs and whatever they want.
Awesome. So let's talk about the future here as we kind of wrap it up. Cohort number 3 is in August. So for those listening, oh my, maybe it's too late. Well, go to a 5 by 5 performance therapy. Go to shieldsandstripes.org. It's right there on the little scrolling thing on the bottom. Go there and start looking at it. Maybe August isn't your time, but obviously they're doing big things, and 5 by 5 goes on every day. So there's not a more opportune time to break out Google and go look at these things. But as we see growth and the organization grows, cohort number 3 is coming up. You said it's going to be a bigger one this time.
Yeah, so we're always getting bigger every cohort. So back in September, we did 1 week in person, 3 weeks telehealth with 4 people. In January, we did 2 weeks in person, 6 weeks of telehealth with 6 people. This time, we're doing 3 weeks of in person and 9 weeks of telehealth with 8 people. And then in October, we're doing 4 weeks of in person and 12 weeks of telehealth with 10 people. And that's our true model. It's the 4 weeks of in person, 12 weeks of telehealth with 10 people. We're not going to make it bigger than 10 people because once you get larger than 10, the group dynamics start to shift. And that's a huge part of our program.
Sure, you want to keep it a little intimate too, and hopefully that the athletes connect with each other in a small enough of a group where they find people in common, but they also find the safety kind of in numbers,
Right.
while they're going through such a vulnerable thing. And again, we talked about it earlier, but
Mm-hmm.
vulnerability is a really huge deal
Mm-hmm.
when you're opening up like this. So cohort number 3 is August. Cohort 4 is October.
Mm-hmm.
You can always go shieldsandstripes.org and find out more. 5 by 5 performance therapy. I think it's .com. I just looked it up.
Mm-hmm.
.com. Yep. 5
Yeah.
by 5 performance therapy.com. And tell them where else they can find you guys, and what you'll be up to between now and like the end of the year.
Yeah. So we're always on Instagram. Lots of content pushed out on Instagram. That's Shields and Stripes. We're always having fundraisers, fun things to do, to participate, to be a part of Shields and Stripes. We're also on Facebook and LinkedIn, so you can follow us on both of those. I keep 5 by 5 pretty quiet, at least on social media, for a couple of reasons, primarily because I do like to target veterans and first responders. So I like to talk a lot about it on these kind of networks, because that's what I got into. I got into this to help the community that I love and served. So not a lot of like social media pushes for 5 by 5. But again, if you need to get a hold of me, at all, you can find me via Shields and Stripes or 5x5. We 5x5 is experiencing some pretty exponential growth. We just added physical therapists and strength and conditioning coaches to our team. I added another registered dietitian. I have one in the queue. So as long as we continue to gain clients and people are requesting us, and nonprofits are requesting our education content, and people want us and we're needed, then I'll continue to grow 5x5 to meet the demand of the population. And as far as Shields and Stripes is concerned, next year we really want to have 4 cohorts of 10. So while this year we have 8 athletes and 6 athletes, next year we want to help 40 people. So that's our goal, and we're going to continue to really drive hard in those funding mechanisms to make sure that no one has to pay a dime when they come to see us, that everything is fully paid for.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's always good to catch up. We'll just kind of do a standing appointment to do this every couple of months or something, because I think it's important to continue to talk about it. It's the best way to get the word out there and to get people to understand it, and you never know who's going to show up. And 40 people a year doesn't sound like a lot on paper, but when you think of the effort and the things that go into it and the time, changing 40 lives is more than 40. It's about changing family members' lives. I mean,
That's right.
it almost triples. And then if they tell one person who takes it seriously and calls 5x5 or looks into Shields and Stripes, you've doubled those numbers. So it's about just planting the seed and getting going forward. And I love what you guys are doing. I think Shields and Stripes is so awesome. And you guys are always welcome here, of course, to come chat about it. I'll never turn you away.
Thank you. Thank you. And eventually, 3 to 5 years down the line, we're going to have multiple facilities executing 40 people per year. So the goal is hundreds. We'll get there. But one thing that we're very serious about is making sure that the quality of our care never reduces. So as we scale, the quality of care remains superior. So we will get there for sure.
Awesome. Well, it's always good to catch up. Thank you so much for coming on. I'll hit the button now here in a second, and we'll catch up some more. But thank you again.
Awesome. Thank you for having me, Jeff.